Rep Radio, an Emory production. Since 2009, our goal has been simple. We support, promote, engage, and inspire the arts community by igniting the ghost light that shines on the stages of the up-and-coming, the unsung heroes, the brilliant writers, and the dynamic designers. Our podcast breaks the fourth wall to give you an inside look at the plays and the players. Stay tuned. Rep Radio is on the air. On today's podcast, I head over to Theater Exile to chat with Deborah Block to talk about the Philadelphia premiere of Among the Dead, written by Hansol Jung. The piece uses a bit of theater magic to craft the story's past, calling on a higher power to show the way. Stay tuned for my interview with Deborah Block. Welcome to Rep Radio. I'm your host, Darnell Radford, and I'm here at Theater Exile, and I'm here with Deb Block. Deb, welcome back.
Thank you so much.
It's always a pleasure to come back and talk to you. We're here in the theater, which has a different layout than the last time I took the tour. If you were listening to me hamming it up in here, this new space, but we're here to talk about Among the Dead, written by Hansol Jung.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Hansol Jung. Deb, I'm going to say welcome home and for like, I don't know, 2 seasons maybe.
That sounds perfect.
Welcome home, because there's signage out front and everything. Tell us about Among the Dead.
Well, it's a wonderful play, and we had been reading Hansol's work for quite a number of years and hadn't found the script that was quite right for us. And when we read it, we all loved it, and it's a little bit scary, both the subject matter and the storytelling. Yeah. It's not what I would call traditional, well-made play. It doesn't have linear storytelling. It goes back in time, and there's magic. Yeah. In the play, which all of those things excite me a great deal, but become challenging when you're directing it. And it starts off in 1975 in a hotel in South Korea, in Seoul, and a young woman, Korean American, comes to Seoul. She is the daughter of a Korean woman, and her father was in the military, an American soldier, and she comes back to collect his ashes, and she doesn't know why. And the play is a lot about identity and understanding who you are. She was a young woman who grew up in Kansas. Probably no one looked like her at all, and her father was barely there to give her any grounding, and she comes in angry. Yeah. Angry, that's all.
And I was thinking about that. I was like, she came in with, I guess, I don't know if it's anxiety or a little bit of anger, and then she dropped that box, which I didn't clearly make out what it was until a little later when it's clearly revealed. And I'm just like, okay, she's relaxing in this moment, and then entrance from a guest.
From a guest.
Who shows up.
Bellboy, sort of.
Bellboy, sort of, yes. Which was really fun and kind of made me think, like, wait, where are we? Because the tone of that character is so, has sort of a laid back vibe. Like, right. Things are okay in a, it's like, I don't want, this isn't an alarming appearance, so to speak. So she played by Cathy Simpson, just has this kind of chill vibe. Yeah. So we end up looking forward to everything she's going to say throughout the whole thing.
Well, so Cathy Simpson beautifully plays the character of Jesus, and it's right there in the script that she is Jesus. And when in in the script that we have, it said Jesus play any race, any gender, any age, like it just the playwright wanted us to explore something, and so we did. We tried, all sorts of things. We had absolutely wonderful actors audition for the part, and we discovered a few things. That we asked why Jesus, first of all, like why would, if you're going to have a deity guide characters on a journey, why this deity, right? And we talked about the relationship to Christianity and Korea, which does have there is a history of the missionary presence and when that happened, but at 1945, where we go back to the 40s, we go back to the end of World War II. Jesus did not have a presence there, but why Jesus? So Jesus is a deity that has walked this earth and has capacity for compassion and understands human suffering.
Yeah.
And so that was the reason that we thought Jesus. And so we needed to find someone. I realized soon in the auditions it couldn't be someone who was too young.
Yeah.
Because of that empathy that you have when you've walked this earth a little bit longer. And so that was one of the things that we looked at. We also didn't want Jesus to be someone who was reflected in any of the other characters on stage. And it felt, because Dan O'Neill, who's our casting director, and I said when we were coming up with the scenes to audition people, Jesus is everyone's scene partner, right? And so that was sort of the theme of the play. Jesus guides each of the characters in very different ways through this play, with a young woman's search for identity, and so each of the characters had to somehow be able to resonate with that person. And I didn't think the main character, whose name is Number 4, would have had an easier. It would have been too difficult for her to resonate with a man.
Yeah.
And so we went with a woman of a certain age.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It for whatever reason, not the entirety of the piece, but just the presence of Jesus made me think about it from an American perspective. Mm-hmm. And I was, on my way home, I was thinking about that. I was like, why did I just immediately go to, this is the American perspective, because of the presence of Jesus?
Well, yes, because of the presence of Jesus, but also this is something I don't think you really notice on first viewing, because it's subtle in the play, but Jesus connects with each of the three characters on their own terms. Mm-hmm. So Cathy Simpson comes in, or Jesus comes in, it's like, hey man, how you doing? Because it's written like that, because that's how Anna, who's the main, one of the main characters who's going on this journey, is a hippie from the United States. And so that's how you first connect with Jesus, is Jesus connecting to Anna. She never says, hey man, right on, with any of the other characters.
Yeah.
She only says that with Anna. And when she's talking with Luke, who's the soldier, she says, you have visuals, they don't. She does military shorthand.
Yeah.
And she sings and dances with Number 4 because she's a child, and they behave in a childlike way.
Yeah. I also think it's funny that Jesus is the provider of of the grass.
Of the grass, yes. There's drug use in this play. Well, again, it's a 1975 kind of Jesus Christ superstar kind of way of looking at Jesus.
But there's a way of looking at it that says Jesus would have been okay with it.
Yeah. I don't think Jesus judges in that way,
Yes. Yeah. I'm sure. Yeah. There's so much going on today that if you're like hovering over, if Jesus is hovering over all of us, saying like, not quite what I thought, not quite what I had in mind. Yeah. But let's play this out.
Yeah, right. That's right.
There is interesting storytelling dynamic here that when I processed, I was like, oh, this is clever. Like, this had to be in like the. I'm wondering. I would love to know where the playwright decided to place this in. Maybe like the third or fourth version, to be like, what if I add this element?
Right. Well,
where you just sort of where Anna channels the past in order to make sense of the present. You know.
Well, I'm going to jump ahead in future and say I saw her latest play in New York, Wild Goose Dreams, and it has similar feel in characters trying to connect over expanses, people being lost, birthdays, and magical realism and this. I think the embracing of magic in the storytelling. So I think this is something that's important to her in terms of the storytelling. I love when the form of the storytelling can inform the actual story. And it can be a little complicated. The storytelling is definitely complicated, and but I think it gives the right disorientation, and this tells us what we really need to do. That we're at a time right now where identity and who we are and labeling and fully embracing ourselves is in the forefront of our conversation.
Yeah.
And I think why this play is so resonant to me is it's saying you must understand where you come from before you can fully declare who you are. And not to dismiss, but to embrace and understand. And sometimes there are ugly things in our past.
Yeah.
And things that we've liked to put to the background and not bring forward, but you have to embrace all of yourself and the good, the bad, the ugly. And I think the reason that it felt like such an Exile play is, to me, that's at the heart of our mission, is I like to find plays that illuminate the part of ourselves that we try to keep in the dark. Because that's how you really get to the gritty conversations.
Yeah.
You know,
Where do you think we got that idea from? Like, you know, let's just move forward and not necessarily pretend. This kind of pulls into today where we're talking about what's currently going on in Washington. You know, they want to just move on, and instead of like focusing on it, kind of makes me think like, where do we get this mindset that if we don't actually understand what happened, that we can move forward with all the knowledge we need?
I blame a lot on our youth-based culture, that we are a society that so values youth and youthfulness that we have forgotten to value wisdom, memory, history. My mother would yell at the news and say, "Don't you remember what happened 5 years ago?"
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
And I think I think it might. This is me just talking out my tush real fast, but like that. I think it's connected to that, where we have, you know, a new round of people reporting the news, or a new round of people as our I don't know, the makers of whoever is, you know, decision makers in our society, and we're valuing people that are younger and younger, and they're not being asked
who don't have the history. Yeah.
They don't have the history, and they're not valued. They see no purpose of it.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's a value to go, that was ridiculous. Let's like start from the beginning and entirely ignore something. But you still have to know what you are choosing to ignore and choosing what you want to get rid of. And so, because you might be able to do it for yourself because you have the understanding within your body, even though it may not be been put outwardly. But if you erase all those memories, you don't know what you're doing to the person you're talking to.
Yeah.
You're not coming with this sense of respect and understanding. If you say, let's just get rid of the past, maybe the person across from you doesn't want to get rid of the past, wants to embrace who they are. And I think that's the essence of part of this respect that we should have for our fellow humans. And so I think it might be connected to that aspect, this trait of the Americans, with the things that we do here.
I ultimately feel like, for the most part, it's just that people don't want to be on record about their understanding of the past. Sort of like this.
Why do you think that is?
Because if they realize, if there's a realization of where we've been, then they know that they should be treading lightly, or that they should use caution moving forward, because we've been here before. So if they pretend that part is not important, or they're at least not on record about what happened in a very similar situation, then they can just move forward, quote, blindly, as if this is a brand new thing, or convince themselves that there's something so uniquely specific about what we're dealing with today that has no relevance to how we've dealt with a similar situation in the past.
That's a fascinating idea, that it gives you a little carte blanche to be a bull in a china shop. Because,
and plus,
I don't know.
And people don't like to be told what to do, even though we do look for leadership, and we're constantly criticizing people for their lack of leadership too. It's just like a contradiction that's just designed to confuse. But ultimately, it's like, there's also people who just want to confuse you so that they can have you look over here while they're getting away with murder.
That's true too.
Over there.
It's definitely true. There's a moment in the play. Well, in 1975 in Seoul, there were a lot of student riots. They're trying to push democracy and freedom. And at one point, Anna, who is the young Korean American, played by Bijan No, she asked Jesus, bellboy, says, "What are the riots about?" And says, "Freedom and democracy." And she said, Anna says, "Well, after all these years of fighting for the same thing, don't you think we would have learned how to do it?" And Jesus' response is, "Same fight, but it's new people. Yeah. Sometimes we have to go through it ourselves." And I think that's the story of the play. Like, you need to go through it yourself sometimes.
The world has a sit-down old man mentality.
Yeah.
This is, I feel like this whole season I've been finding ways to sort of shoehorn Washington into everything.
Well, it's hard not to. It's taking up so much of our brain power right now, and because we have to navigate the truth of our leadership. Yeah. And I feel like everyone's journey is about, how do I wake up in the morning and continue on with my day, try to be my best person and be a good person for those around me, right? And so there you go. That's what I'm supposed to do in a day. But if we have this like big issue at the heart of it, which is, if you believe that the macrocosm reflects the microcosm or informs, we're seeing all this chaos at what should be our center, what should be our guide. And we have to navigate the fact that it's not that way. And how do you embrace all of the things that are happening without actually curling up under your bed and just going, I can't hear anything, I don't want to do anything. Because we still want to go, we're compelled to go out into the world and be our best selves. And
in a weird way, we tend to stand still in times of war. And there are, we go into war for a specific purpose, but the, as we're moving forward towards that particular purpose, we're creating more problems that we're just not. We can't focus on that right now.
Right.
So, I was thinking in here, like, the injustices of World War II were not just the war itself. It was the people that were displaced and everyone that was treated, badly during this whole thing. And the mindset of moving towards something good while creating all this destruction in the
Right.
process. So we fixed one thing, but we broke 6 other things on the way to fixing the one thing.
It's true. It's true, because that's what war does.
Yeah.
That's what war does.
What was rehearsal like? What were some of those conversations like? The first read and as you progress through.
We had a lot of wonderful conversations in this play. There's a wonderful team of people involved with this production. I was really honored to have Kat Ramirez as the assistant director and Stephanie Walters as the dramaturg on this production, which was just fantastic. And of course, the cast, Clarice Park and B and James and Cathy, were just wonderful to have these conversations with. And there was often stopping and talking.
Let's unpack this.
Yeah. And also, we had great designers too, who we'd be talking through. Melissa Dunphy, who's our sound designer. We would stop and go, okay, let me understand this moment. Let's see what's happening here. What's the bigger story that's being told here? Even down to, so in Korea they have a lot of things happening through speakers, and this is a thing. This is a thing that it happens.
And I didn't notice that speaker
And
until now.
Right. And you know what? That was something I actually meant to ask.
Even though I heard it everywhere,
Yes.
but I just heard it as because we're in that world. Here's and that's how it was going. But I didn't even notice it was right there.
Yeah, and that's a little bit of a problem, as you didn't see it. But that was the thing. So Melissa decided to add a little muzak under some of the announcements to create like this contrast of, we're going to tell you about riots on the street, but you have this like muzak going on underneath it. The dichotomy, the contradictions that were inherent in there. And so we had a lot of lovely conversations, and really informative ones, because I feel like there's a lot about this play that, there's certainly things that are resonant to me in terms of my own background and history, and I've always called myself a cultural mutt, and and just what I've come from. But yet, this is someone else's history, and to be able to make sure that we were dealing with it really in a really thoughtfully. It deals with comfort women, which even though, I had heard about comfort women, years ago, but not in any sort of real way. Only recently has the idea of a comfort woman, the Japanese, taking the Korean women and sending them wherever their soldiers were. That's why the first scene takes place in Burma, because that was one of their places that they colonized. Yeah. And so they had all these women that ended up there. And just to deal with it thoughtfully, down to the whole notion of how few women found their way back to reconciling with their families. Yeah, and so how do we deal with the journey of the play in relationship to the actual history? Yeah, and
just the cavalier nature of it, like Luke has that moment where he's so so fearful, and then in that moment of fear, just now needs to be comforted, right? And just sort of takes.
He assumes that if something feels right to him, then it has to be okay for everyone around him.
Yeah, and that moment was definitely like oh yes, because this happened. Yeah, and you're saying like, wow, that's so. Yeah, can you imagine like being in his headspace, but at the same time being in the headspace of the woman, right, who is just in, kind of in the middle of this, and sort of, I just gotta.
Even
so far from home, and like needing to have some sort of sense of something, right, and just just take it.
Just take it. This is what a lot of men were taught.
Yes.
That was part of, he's in the 40s, it's 40s. And think about, like, even in the United States, a woman was basically, married off, who she was supposed to be married off. She didn't much have a say in it. And so now here in this other country, and you're being trained as a soldier, you're being trained to go and conquer.
Yes. So that's exactly not just your enemy, but sort of anyone. You kind of have this mindset of just, I can just take whatever I want.
I think it's very difficult to assume for a human to be taught one set of morals. You're going to go, we're going to conquer. We are right. We are inherently right. We're from the United States, therefore we are right. We're from the United States, therefore we are morally superior. And we are going to fix things the way we think they should be fixed, and go ahead and kill and destroy and do what you need to do because we're inherently right. And to be able to switch that off in another situation, I think it's dang near impossible to assume that a person in their teens, which a lot of the soldiers were, to be able to have that level of emotional maturity to be able to do that.
Exactly.
How can you do
I don't
that?
know why it never crossed our minds that we're putting this kind of authority into the hands of children.
Yeah.
That we've essentially, brainwashed, if you're going to be critical, conditioned to take this authoritative role.
Right. They're trained to take orders and to be a certain way and not to question things, because in a military situation, you can't have someone questioning every single thing. They don't know the big picture. It's not safe, and so they're absolutely being conditioned to just drink the Kool-Aid, buy into it, and they have to know they're right. How could you take out a gun and kill all sorts of people if you did not fully believe that you were right?
Yeah.
You just can't do it.
And still feel like a hero.
Not
the villain, because we're having more conversations as writers write better villains, because the villain has or who we've classified as the villain tends to have a justification.
That's right.
And now that we are putting more of a focus on this, on the understanding that position as well, you're starting to say, like, wow, like, what had to happen in their life to be conditioned to believe this is right? And at the same time, you're saying, well, if I can now understand the headspace of, who we've called the villain or the
right,
then what is that saying about how I'm thinking? Am I wrong? Or if they're right, and if we're praying to the same deity,
right.
who wins?
Who wins? Wow.
How do you find about? So, like, the presence of Jesus there in the middle of all of that, kind of supporting all of them.
Right.
It's like, but someone has to come out on top here.
Well, then it goes to the journey of the story that or even our life's journey, if you want to keep talking, and in terms of this, that it's not so much who comes on top, it's like, can we be our best selves in all of these circumstances? How do we be our best selves? Well, I think for Anna's case, she has to understand who she is.
Yeah.
You can't be your best self if you don't have a sense of self. And that, I think, is the inherent question for her, is who is she? And can she embrace where she came from, how she was born?
Yeah.
And
can she understand the situation in which she came into the world.
Right.
And now, with everything that she's processed up to this point, and moved forward in her life.
Right. It would be lovely if most of the people who walk the earth were born out of like pure love and desire, but that's just not true.
No.
It's not true. We're not all born out of love and desire, and we're not all weaned in that environment.
Yeah.
And so, still, then how do we become our best selves?
Yeah.
What does it mean to be our best selves? What does it mean to not just say overcome, but embrace and find the strength from everything?
Yeah.
There's the goddess Kali, the Hindu goddess. I think she's a goddess of creativity and destruction. I'm sure someone will correct me on that. But the idea is that you have to look at the darkness in order before you can see the light.
The light.
Yeah, and for beauty comes there, and you have to face it. You have to face the things that are difficult for us. If you run away, you will keep running into it.
Yeah.
You will continue to be lost in the woods until you go ahead and face it.
Yeah. What have been some of the responses from the audience?
We've had a whole range of responses. I mean, even the first preview, there was someone who was just bawling, couldn't leave the audience. You know, I've had people who have hit them in their hearts, and I've had people who it's hit in the head. That's so interesting. I have so much to think about. I've had people who the storytelling was not for them because it jumps back and forth in time, and other people were like, "Oh my God, I was there for the ride." Like there was one person because the play sort of comes back and circles back on itself, and there's a scene that is done twice, and audibly there's a person in the audience just like, "Oh, here again," you know, like they were like, "Oh," you know, you could hear them like just going on the ride with it.
Yeah.
Loving. So it's been pretty exciting. It's been kind of scary for me because it's a hard play and an important play, and one that it took a lot of discussion and talking with people, deciding if we were going to do it, if we were the right company to do it, if we should touch it, if I was the right director to do it, you know, all of these things. And we put a lot of thought into it, but that didn't make it any more nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
You know, because talking about this history and wanting to be as respectful and bringing it to light. I have great faith in the artistic sensibility and artists. I have great faith in artists. I think you become that, you can take that name if you can look at the world through so many different lenses, and your job is to translate our world around us and deliver it back in a way that helps the audience. Yeah. Again, be better people, you know, whether it's through entertainment, straight entertainment, to really hard issues, or somewhere in the middle, which is what I think most art is. And I have great faith in that. But again, we are at a time where we're trying to figure out identity and who we are and who should tell what stories. And it's a time to be sensitive to that. If I'm having a conversation with the world or my audiences, that's my job as a theater company. We're having a conversation. I can't ignore the conversations that the audience is having. And so what is important?
But I guess my thought is you can't change who you are.
No.
And if this piece resonates with you and you want to tell this story, or you want to bring this story to life, you know, I think we should be more interested in who is telling this story and see how they tell this story.
But going back to trying to both be open to different artists' interpretations of art, yet being sensitive to who should be telling the story. It's a tricky thing to navigate. I mean, like I said, I asked myself. It was actually Dan O'Neill who, you know, I'm talking with him about whether or not we should do do this play, and if I'm the right person, Deborah, don't you remember your own stories? And I do have, he knows my background a little bit, and so there are things in terms of coming from multiple cultures, and identity questions because of that, and how I resonate with, traditional, and so there were things in my personal past that he had to remind me of, and that may address a certain thing that I can be sensitive to certain parts of it, but that was not the end of the picture. That was not the end of it. I knew that if I was going to tackle this, I needed a strong team around me. That had a deeper connection to the history that was here, and hopefully, I feel entirely blessed by the team that was around me. It was just absolutely beautiful, caring, engaged people that went on this journey with us, and I hope we did it justice.
Will there be discussions during the run?
Yes, we always have at least 2 post-show discussions, and depending on how the play is and received, we might add some more. And I tend to try and be around a bit so that people can just lobby chats, especially with the tougher shows.
The one thing I do like about Coming to Exile is that the play ends, but the experience doesn't end right away.
Right.
We are in the lobby engaging.
Yes.
We are, and I always feel like I'm always having a continued conversation on the way home. That's why I love bringing a guest. Or finding someone I know. And walking with them for a couple of blocks to process. This Philadelphia premiere, Among the Dead, is on stage at the new Theater Exile. And if you're listening to this, you can get tickets. So you can go to theaterexile.org. And you get more than one because theater is more fun with a +1.
It is true. And if you're an artist listening, we always do 50% off for our theater friends. You can do that ahead of time or at the door. That's fine. Got Student Rush.
And come see this piece and be a part of this conversation. Deb, thank you for welcoming me into your new home and talking a little bit about this piece, Among the Dead, even though we are among the living.
We are among the living. Well, that's the irony. That's what we want to be. We want to be among the living and do as much as we can while we're here.
I like this space. I really like this
we
space.
We really did have an excellent group of designers. Colin McIlvain came in and did the set, and Melissa Dunphy and Ariel Wang and Drew Bilyeu and Jen Burkhart from Vista, they came together and really did create a beautiful environment. And the thing that I said to Colin was, just don't give me a proscenium, because I didn't want the show, not only because it goes back in time and jumps all over, the formality of a proscenium didn't feel right. There wanted to be air and movement, and I wanted metaphor hanging out. So they've got metaphor hanging all over this space. It is truly an environment, and they really did work together beautifully. And Melissa is a composer. It's not just the sound, but if you listen carefully, you can hear her playing underneath where there's bombs and things. She creates a beautiful soundscape and environment.
All right. Well, thanks for chatting with me.
Always a pleasure.
And, get here and be a part of the conversation here at this production, Among the Dead, at Theater Exile. Thanks, Deb.
Thank
it's always
you.
A pleasure.
Thanks, Darnell.
Rep Radio continues to be inspired by our community and listeners like you. We are proud to be an Emory production. Visit us online at em3ry.com. Ride with us. Emory is on the move.